I'd like to give you an introduction to our BYOD program. This is for those of you who are new teachers to the school, just to let you know what we do, how we view our BYOD program. This is not a complete or a thorough discussion of everything about technology, but just gives you an outlook and helps you to understand kind of where we're coming from with this. First, let's think about what we mean by BYOD. Well, that's an acronym that stands for Bring Your Own Device. Some other schools, you might hear it called BYOT, Bring Your Own Technology. I think in our area there's also schools that use BYLD, Bring Your Learning Device. It all means the same thing. All the students in our school, it's all the students 6th through 12th grade, are expected to bring a suitable device to school. That's the way we phrase it. They are expected to bring a device. In the same way as they're expected to bring pencil, pen, paper, calculators for math class, they're expected to bring a computing device. And so these are used for learning purposes at school. Now, what do I mean by a suitable device? Well, bring your own device by nature means that it is something that varies, where not everybody's going to have the same thing. So there's a variety of things that students can use. They can bring laptops. They might have Windows, Mac, or Chromebooks. Our system allows any of them. They might bring tablets, such as an iPad or a Windows Surface, something like that. They might even bring phones, like the iPhone or an Android, something like that. Now, with phones, and also I put in this category the iPod Touch because it is basically an iPhone without the phone, but we have found that these are more difficult for students to use, and they may not be suitable for all the things we want to do with them, especially if you're expecting students to do much writing in class. We've found that phones are difficult to use. Now, we don't tell students they cannot bring them. In fact, many of the students who have the other devices use their phones as secondary devices sometimes, and that's fine. But and if all they bring is a phone, that's fine. We just tell the parents up front it's going to be more difficult for your student to do what they need to do if all they have is a phone. So those are the devices. Basically, we're looking at devices that they can create content with. They have to be able to access the internet. They need to be able to that means they need to be able to log into to access our network here at school, and they need to be able to create content like writing, that type of thing. It's not just something to view content with. So that means that things like the Kindle reader are not acceptable because that's just for reading. You can't create anything with it. So that's an overview of the devices that we allow students to use. Now, for teachers, okay, as you start thinking about bringing technology in for the students, we need to be sure that we have the right perspective on what we're doing here. We need to think, do we consider technology an enemy or a tool? Now, I realize, and I've taken logic classes, I've just committed a logical fallacy that's called bifurcation, where I've set up two things as opposites, and you have to choose one or the other. But this helps us give us a perspective to consider. You see, if we come into the program, if you come to the class and the students have computers, if you approach it with the attitude of technology is an enemy I have to fight. I'm going to have to watch it like a hawk. The kids are going to be watching porn in class. They're going to be harassing each other online in the middle of chapel. This is something I'm going to have to fight against. If that's the outlook you have, then the focus becomes one of rules, of policies, finding ways for kids not to use technology. However, if your outlook is that BYOD, that the computing devices are a tool, then you start thinking, how can I teach the kids more effectively with technology than I could without it? What can I encourage them to do with technology that will help them? How can I point them in the right direction? You see, there are ways kids can misuse a BYOD program. They're sinners. We're sinners too. But our students are sinners. They're going to find ways to misuse BYOD or whatever tool they have. But the thing is, the technology is not the problem. The sinful heart is the problem. Technology is not the enemy. Sin is the enemy. And so if we focus on a biblical perspective of working with our students, we're going to start looking for ways we can use technology, not only for classroom curriculum purposes, but also we can start seeing technology as a means of reaching the heart of our students. Their use of technology can reveal what's in their hearts. That can then provide us with opportunities to minister the gospel to them. Now, we need to think about acceptable uses. We have a fairly extensive acceptable use policy that the students and parents have signed, and we go over highlights with them, and I don't want to focus on rules. I don't want this to become okay, here's all the rules you've got to follow. But we do need to have basic parameters for them. And so here's what we emphasize with the students. They need to protect their own device. That means they're responsible for it, not you. If students leave their devices lying around, it's not your job to protect it or to find it or anything like that. They need to learn to take care of it. Don't allow them to ask if they can put their device in your classroom or in your office. If you can watch it for them, like when they go to lunch or something. That makes you responsible for it. They've got a locker, or they can just keep their device with them. Students are also responsible to protect their own account. They log in with their own information. They're not to share their passwords with each other. Students are to accept responsibility for their actions. If something's on their account, if it's on their Facebook, if it's on their Schoology page, it's their responsibility. We don't allow them to come back and say, well, I didn't mean to say that. And we also don't allow students to blame technology for their failures. I mean, this is just the updated version of the dog ate my homework. They have to take responsibility for turning in their work, for seeing that it gets submitted in Schoology, that type of thing. If they accidentally delete a file, they can't blame the computer and say, oh, well, this is just too hard to do. Okay, they need to learn how to do it the way they learn how to do other things. Students need to think, don't hinder others' learning. Okay, this is an application of Scripture, the law of love. You don't want to hinder others. And so if you are sitting in class and you're doing something that is not related to class, other students are going to see you and they will be distracted. Okay, that's what we can tell the students. They need to think about others and not only themselves. If you hack someone else's account or mess up their files, you're hindering their learning. See, bring it back down to Scripture and what the Bible expects of us. Students are to give credit where it's due. It's the whole idea of plagiarism, unauthorized use of pictures, video, or sound, that type of thing. Now, the students can use their devices with teacher permission. You're in charge in the classroom. So if you say no technology, if you say, okay, put your devices away, they do it. Okay. The students don't have a right to demand technology. Okay. So they follow that. If you say put your devices away, they need to do it. You're in charge. Students are not to take pictures or video or sound recording without your permission. Okay, so they're not to be in class making a video of your class or recording your class or something like that without your permission. Not in the halls either, not in the bathrooms, not in the classroom, anywhere. They need to have permission to do it. Students are to use the school Wi-Fi, not their own personal cellular data plan. Now, this is difficult to police. It's difficult to monitor. because there's nothing obvious that would tell you that a student is using their data plan instead of the school Wi-Fi. But this is what we want to emphasize to the students. They're not to use their phone during the day. Okay, they're not. They need to make phone calls. They need to use a school phone with permission, or if you want to give them permission, under your oversight to use their phone for something that they need to call about, they can do that. But that's it's not just, well, I have my phone, I need to call somebody. Same thing about texting. Now, say you're no texting during class. In the high school anyway, we don't have a problem. Okay, if kids are between class and they text one another, okay, that's going to happen. Don't worry about that. The main thing here is they're not supposed to be doing it during class time. And all of this is still relatively new for us. This is just our third year of a BYOD program, so we might change policies during the year as things go along. So now let me give you some suggestions for ways you can use technology. One quick way is as a student response system. You can use, there's an app called Socrative. There's another one called Today's Meet. These are ways that you can have students respond in class. You can ask a question, they can instantly answer. You can check and see if they understand things. You can get comments. These are some great apps that you can use. And by the way, the things that I mentioned here are available on all the platforms. That's what we want to emphasize when you find apps to use. If you have something that only works on an iPad, you need to find something else because not all of your students are going to have iPads. You can use Schoology for more than just posting assignments. They can take quizzes. They can have discussions online. They can submit assignments. They can do a lot with Schoology. You can use their student email, send them notes, communicate with them through their email. Have them download Bible apps and Bible tools and do some Bible study. There's a lot of things they can do with it. These are some ways that you can begin using technology with students in class. Now, one of the big deals is classroom management. As a teacher, how do you deal with classroom management issues when all the students have devices? As I mentioned, you are in charge. Okay? Your students cannot say, well, I get to use my device because this is BYOD. Now, if you say, put your devices away, they have to do it. Okay. You can also say, there's some cue words. One is screens down. So that this is something that you can teach the students right at the beginning of the year. When you say screens down, it means if they have a phone or a tablet, they turn the device over so the screen's down. If they have a laptop, they can close their laptop, or at the very least, they can put the screen down far enough that they can't see it. I know that sometimes if they put their screen off, if they close their laptop, it puts it to sleep and takes it a while to wake up. So if they just put the screen down so that it's not visible, that's fine too. But that's the idea of screens down. You might occasionally call for spot check. Spot check, you say, okay, when I say spot check, I want you to show me immediately what's on your device. They turn it around so that you can see it. They hold it up, whatever, so that you immediately see it. It's not, spot check doesn't mean, okay, you hide a few windows and then you show it to me. Spot check is, I want to see it right now. One thing that I strongly encourage you to do, all of your students, again 6th through 12th grade, all of them are going to have a device, a phone, a tablet, a laptop, at least that. I strongly suggest that you have your students, when they come into class, put their devices on the desk. Whether you're going to use them or not, put the device on top of the desk. What that happens is then you see it. You know where it is. You know that they're not hiding it under their desk, trying to send texts. I mean, if you say, okay, I want you to put your devices in your pocket or put it in your backpack, you don't know where it is. You might think they've got it in their backpack, but they may actually have it in their lap. If you say, put it on your desk, You just glance around. If everybody has a device on their desk, then you're fine. If somebody doesn't, then you say, get it out, put it on the desk. That would help a lot of classroom management issues if you consistently expect that. It helps if the students have their devices flat, if possible. That is, if it's a tablet, if it's a phone, where they can lay it flat down on the desk instead of having it held up so that you can't see it. That's the thing. Laptops are a bit different, but anyway, have it so that it's easy to see if you want to see it. You might even have something like when the students come into the room, have written on the board, devices on, devices off. If it's devices off, then it just goes on top of their desk and they don't even have it turned on. A great classroom management suggestion, not just for BYOD, but for anything, is MBWA, management by walking around. If you are constantly walking around the room, if you're regularly moving around, you're going to be more likely to see problems and you're going to prevent problems. Students are going to be less likely to be getting in trouble because you may walk by and see them. So just regularly walk around the class. And if you're doing it on a regular basis rather than just, oh, I think that kid back there is doing something wrong, let me walk back there. If it's just part of your regular habit that you walk around the class, you're going to prevent a lot of problems that way. Some teachers have done what's called Ask 3 Before Me. If you have a question, especially about using your device, ask 3 students before you come and ask me about it. Okay, that helps a lot of things. Students are going to break the rules. Think about what I call an analog equivalent. Okay, think about it like this. When I was in school, before computers, some people say it's before the Earth's crust had cooled, but when I was in school, we would pass notes in class. Okay. The equivalent today is texting. Okay. Now, when we passed notes, the teacher did not punish us by taking our paper and pencils away from us and say, okay, you're using your paper and pencils wrong, I'm going to take them away from you. No, they did something else. They might confiscate the note. They might have us stay after school. A number of different things they might do. Well, think about it. If they're texting, think about it the same way. What are things you can do besides taking the device away? Because if you take the device away, then it's not available for them for other learning purposes. If they're distracted, if they're playing games. Well, when I was in school, we might be distracted. I might hide a Mad magazine in my science book, something like that. Well, what was done then? Well, the magazine was confiscated. Maybe I had to, sit where the teacher could see me. Do the same type of thing with a device. If they're distracted, if they're playing games, arrange things so that you can see them better. Think about, like I say, an analog equivalent to the infractions. Also, you ought to think ahead of time what you're going to do after the lesson is over. You finish your class and you got 5 minutes left. Are you going to allow the kids to, play games? That's fine. You can decide that. That's when they can play games. They can do whatever, okay? But decide that. And again, you're in charge. I suggest that when you do something new with them, like the first time you do Socrative, for example, you might set up some type of game or something where they can just kind of play around with it. They're going to experiment. It's going to be something cool to them. Okay, let them fool around with it. For 6th graders especially, as they're first doing BYOD, okay, they're going to be enthralled just with playing with their devices. Okay. Give them a little bit of time to let them fool around, let them goof off, do some things that kind of are fun for them, just to show them here's what they can do. And then you can get down to learning. That's going to cut down on a lot of problems later. So if you have questions as we go through the year, please be sure and let me know. And I believe it's going to be a good program for all of us.